I did this research this summer with a professor at my university about video game music and young children, because it combines two things that are really important to me, which are music education and video games. So a little bit about me. So I'm currently getting my undergraduate degree at Boston University, where I've been studying music education. I am going into my last semester. I've been making video game music stuff on YouTube for over 6 years. I'm known for playing the saxophone, but I play piano, I sing, I play the flute. I kind of do whatever. I do music theory videos. I've taught online privately for 3 years through my Patreon account. Anything from arranging, composition, recording, piano, you name it. Students are like, can you teach us? I'm like, sure. That's why I'm here to learn from you, just like you're here to learn from me. I've done panels at MAGFest. We just did one yesterday, a group of us on video game music, theory, and modal music. And we've done that at MAGFest, PAX East, MomoCon. And yeah, I think that hits everything. Oh, and I stream piano and music theory on Twitch. So that's a fairly new thing. That's just kind of a little other way to, interact with people and teach them in a different platform. So they believe, early childhood music researchers and practitioners believe that children should have a exposure to a variety of musical elements. How many of you, real quick, have music theory experience, knowledge? Okay, good. Don't worry if you do not. I'm going to explain it two ways because, not everyone does. So basically they want kids to hear difference in keys, what is the song in, tempo, which is how fast or slow it is, dynamics, how loud or soft it is, articulation is basically how they start the note, whether it's kind of smooth or a little bit more forceful. Style is just kind of grouped with instrumentation, so jazz, rock, orchestral, etc. And meter is just what the song is in, and it's called a time signature if you don't know. So basically what the pulse is and how they are writing it out in notation. And so they believe that, they did a survey and over 67% of Americans ages 2 and older, I know that's a small group because we have so many people from all over the world that are not being accounted for this, but they do play video games here in the US, ages 2 and up, about 67%. So that's a notable time that they are exposed to the music during gameplay. I mean, think about, when you were younger, how much, you heard the same song over and over and over because you would get stuck. I still hear that as a 22-year-old getting stuck at every video game I play. And what's really cool now, with technology and everything, is that they're experiencing the music outside the games because, we do have YouTube videos now where people are covering the music, but there are also scores being written for school-age children, orchestral scores for, your middle school for The Legend of Zelda or wind band stuff, and it's also entering our concert halls. We have Video Games Live, we have Video Game Orchestra, we have a lot of local orchestras across the US who do things with video game music. So you see that it's kind of permeating more and more into children's, listening. So the question we kind of set out to aim, my professor and I, was determining whether video game music aligned with the recommendations for children ages 8 and under. This is the target demographic that my professor works with. She works with infants all the way up through ages 8. Because we don't really, and we still don't, understand the degree to which the music aligns with the recommendations, which I showed earlier, just kind of having that variety in what key it's in, how loud or soft the things are, all those elements I talked about earlier. So we set out to answer the questions of what was the musical content of the most profitable games produced for children ages 6 to 8 in 2018. We had to set a pretty tight parameter because I only had 10 weeks to do the research, as much as I would have loved to analyze things like Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door and Chrono Trigger, my favorite games. They didn't fall in this demographic, so we couldn't do it. And to how they, what was the content like and how did it align with, what practitioners say children should have. So I wanted to take a quick second. These are the 8 games that we looked at, and I always like to show the box art for anyone who is unfamiliar, because sometimes parents, might not do research on the game, or the kids, and they're just like, all right, that looks really bright and colorful, let's just get it. So I always like to show this as a way to kind of prep you, and we're gonna get into some listening stuff. So we looked at Detective Pikachu, Super Mario Party, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, Mario Tennis Aces, Sonic Mania Plus, Katamari Damacy Reroll, Kirby Star Allies, and Luigi's Mansion. Some of these, I know you're like, wait, some of these are older titles, but they did have re-releases in 2018 on consoles, so we did put those kind of in the pool. So the initial plan was to have me write out sheet music for every single song. It was like 587 songs total across the 8 soundtracks, so very quickly, I was like, no. I transcribe fairly regularly, but I was like, no. So we opted to instead do descriptive notes. So like you'll see the next slide pictures of what my notes looked like, where it just kind of had the soundtrack, like the timestamp, and just anything that related that I thought was notable, the 6 elements that I listed, or just anything else I found interesting. I had people check my work, people who are also like in this field, and they have a much better ear than me, so they could tell me when I was doing something wrong. Thank them. They're all other musicians in the community who are wonderful and helped me with this. And along with writing these notes, I maintained a journal just kind of with my thoughts of like, this is what I thought went well. I found that I could only really work for 45 minutes at a time because it's such active listening where you're sitting and you're like, I have to hear everything. I have to hear everything. And then after that, we kind of looked and analyzed to see if there were emergent patterns, like, within the game itself, but then within each of those elements of like, okay, all the modes, like, what was the general consensus for each soundtrack? Sound good so far? Is this making sense? Awesome. So as you can see, there's a lot of text. These are just 2 little examples. Anything that's a different color is written by someone who is helping me with it. So the brown is, my friend Danny, Danny Music, he's a trombonist, and then I had for Sonic Mania, some of the more EDM focused tracks, I had my friend who does EDM stuff, give me notes on it because I don't know anything about it, so they were kind of able to help me fill in that style component about it. And then you're not supposed to be able to read this, it's okay, but this is my coding process. Coding is basically how I looked for those emergent patterns. So like anything that had to deal with the first one, like, that was a minor mode, which is like a darker sounding key, was in purple, and there's different shades depending on what it was, versus green was for bright major modes, and then any other little nuancy things. So if it was completely percussive, it got yellow. This isn't how you have to do coding if you ever do research. It's just how I like it. I color all my documents. I highlight them like a lunatic, so I just find it helpful. And that's what we did for every single element. So we did that for mode, meter, style, tempi, articulation, and dynamics. I did this, finding the general consensus in each soundtrack of, okay, it did this, it didn't do this, etc. So now we have some examples. So I'm going to play a few and then I'll talk about them. Please feel free, if you're grooving, you're grooving. Like, I'm going to be grooving, so please, if you want to dance a little bit, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. Let me get... one more. Sorry. This thing likes to mess with me. That's just 1 hour of the 3-hour soundtrack. Yeah, so even, like, you know, let's look at it at a fundamental level. All those sounded pretty different, didn't they? Yeah, so I'm gonna go a little music theory on you. So just to give you some context, that first piece, that was the bump bump da 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 dun da dun da dun da dun da da, like that very jazz swing. It was in a not common like meter with how they define it. They call it 6/4. 4/4 is the most common. It had like more advanced scales used in it, like, you know, the word we use is whole tone. The next one was like that kind of chill, like bump, 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 which was like, you know, it had different pianos to create a nice texture. It was in a darker mode. It had like little bits of marimba in the background, like the bump, 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 bump. The next one that was like that string, like bum, 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 bum. That was in a really odd meter, 7/4. It had like all these different things. So to me, what was really cool is like, you know, you look at the box art, let me close that, and it's very monochromatic, you know, it's yellow. But look at how much, you know, variety is being found, you know, in each of those elements that, you know, we talked about in this one soundtrack. And it's, again, this is only a small portion of the 3-hour soundtrack, which is so cool. I had never played Detective Pikachu, so it was really cool to hear that and then realize that that's what the movie was based on, because I had no idea. So then next we have some Katamari, and I'm just going to play 2 selections from Katamari, and I'm going to turn this down because these songs are very loud, but that's what makes them great. I see so many of you know the words. And then one more from Katamari. Oh my god, it keeps doing that. I'm sorry. I challenge you to not feel happy after hearing that song. Like, so Katamari was a really cool soundtrack to look at because it's kind of short. You know, it's only an hour, which you're like, only an hour? It's some of these were very long. So the main theme, what's really cool about it is that it's just this really cool, it's layering of just like, you know, you have this like percussion going and then the growing and then you have the little brass da-da-da right before everyone's favorite words, na-na, na-na-na, na-na, 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 na. What's really cool about that main theme is, so I listen to it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's just in, you know, plain old good major. No, it's actually in Mixolydian, which is fancy, which basically means in our normal major scale, we have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and you want me to go up to that C, like you want me to resolve it, do. So basically what the Mixolydian does is it takes away that tension, and it's, I'm gonna see if I could do this. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. Oh my God. Ti, do. It like takes away like the tension. I had to I'm like, what's the note again? Can you tell I'm not a singer? I'm a saxophonist. So that's the main theme. And then what's really nice about Lonely Rolling Star is, so it's mostly Japanese lyrics, but there are a few English words, like, the notable you're lonely rolling star. It's electronic. There's a lot of really cool EDM elements in it. And all the songs in Katamari, like, they have some that are kind of samba jazz oriented, like more rap oriented, all kinds of genres in there. And they all have positive messages if you look at the translations. This one I just learned fairly recently is about someone waiting for a loved one, and they're like, I'll wait for you kind of thing. It's so wholesome, okay? But they're both a lot of the soundtrack is in fairly bright modes or keys. So it was okay in that regard, but style is kind of where it really shone, having so much variety with the vocals and just the instrumentation and everything. Next we have some Super Mario Party. And the next one. I like that merengue piano right there at the end. Bum, ba, bum, 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 ba, bum. So, yeah, they were all really groovy, but didn't they all kind of sound the same a little bit? So yeah, they're all based on the title theme, kind of. So the style was there in terms of you had this really Latin-inspired one for the first one, and that nice soprano sax lead. Then you had that kind of bossa nova elevator jazz sound with the shakers and the marimba, the vibraphone. And then the last one is more electronically focused. So yeah, it meets the style, but you see how it's a lot of kind of recycled material in that regard, where it's okay, it's cool that you're using the theme and using it differently, but it's pretty close. I gotta be negative. I can't just say it's all amazing. It takes away my credibility as a 22-year-old researcher. And now we have some Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. Pretty cool, right? What I really love about the main theme in this song is that it's so quirky sounding, especially with like all those little sound effect things. The main theme, I don't have my notes in front of me right now, but I believe it's in Lydian, which is like one of the brightest modes that you can get in, music. So, it's not a common thing compared to, just your basic major or minor. So, you see that there's the variety in that mode element. There's a lot of cool instrumentation in there. Then with the second one, like that boss theme sounding thing, like, there's all these really epic strings, brass moments, timpani, percussion. It's very orchestral sounding. And the third one was very rock orchestral, so you have some nice variety. And the second clip that I played is in a very, very cool mode for all you super nerds called Phrygian Dominant. I got some cheers in the back from the people who study jazz. But yeah. That's not a common mode. That's, if you don't know what that is, it's not common. That's how I'll preface that. So again, we're seeing strong variety in a few of these elements, especially style and mode, which are kind of the hardest ones, I think, to hit. Then we have some Mario Tennis Aces. Got the fancy YouTube video for this one. They're like setting it up for us. Both kind of sounded similar, right? Similar keys, similar instrumentation, similar everything. So like, you have the guitar, you have the bass, you have the drums, kind of doing similar patterns. Like, you have the bass going and both. You have the drums doing the same like basic rock pattern, like something like that. I don't know. I'm not a drummer. Similar keys, like similar thing where they're incorporating that French horn in that B section to kind of like back it off and create contrast. So they're very, very similar. Again, this is an example where, like, there is a lot of variety in some places, but there are others where, they are kind of close. And that's not a bad thing, but it's important to recognize that, there are tracks that do contain similarities. And while that can be good, there are times where, when you listen to these soundtracks 5 or 6 times and it's like 15 hours of music all together, it starts to take a toll after a while. You're like, these all kind of sound the same. And I think this is the last set of examples, and it's my favorite one to talk about. So for those of you that don't know the mechanic of Sonic Mania, it's basically you go through the worlds and there's 2 acts, is what they call it, ACT. So there's Act 1 and there's Act 2, and the music changes depending on the act. So we're going to look to see, well, do they really change it? How do they change it? And I pulled 2 of my favorite examples. Cut it off, but Act 2. we'll talk about this one and then we'll go to the next one. So, very different, yeah? That piano solo in the first one, it's wild, let me tell you. I tried learning it, dear God. So let's break it down a little bit. You know, we have this really funk-oriented, and we can kind of feel it like, you know, some people might feel like bum bum da 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 da. Like, you know, neither is wrong. It depends on where you're feeling what we call the macro beat, like the bigger pulse. Versus the second one is a little bit more straight ahead, like bum bum bum. The first one, you know, I think very funk-oriented with all the brass lines, that really cool piano solo. Then the second one, you know, straight ahead, I always think of it as bachata, which is a type of Dominican music that is like very straight ahead feel, where it's just very, you can feel this pulse driving the entire time. It uses some Latin rhythms. It kind of reminds me of conga by Gloria Estefan. It's like that high energy kind of stuff from the like 80s, I think that's right. I took a class on this, all right. And instead of that piano solo, you have this really cool synth solo. It's a little bit more EDM oriented, but it still has those jazz elements, and there's these nice string counter melody parts happening in there. It's a lot to unpack, obviously, but it's really cool that with the same kind of source material and the same theme, they could create two very different products compared to what we just saw before with Mario Tennis Aces, where same source material, but they were two very similar products. And Oil Ocean Zone is great. If those of you who, you know, you got your ears on and you know your modes, listen carefully to see if you can tell me what mode it is. Oh, come on. Not that mode. Did anyone know what mode that's in? It's okay if you don't know the answer. It's tricky. No. I'm sorry. That was really mean. No, it's not Dorian. It's actually our little friend from before, Phrygian Dominant. Yeah, it's a tough one. I didn't get it at first, and then I had to listen to it and write out every note I heard and try and put it in a scale. I'm like, what is this? And then I used the internet. I'm like, what scale is Phrygian with the raised 7th? Because I don't know anything. And they're like, oh, it's Phrygian Dominant. I'm like, oh, okay. Found organically. You know, it's not like they're sitting at a table going, okay, we're going to write a song, and it's got to be in Phrygian Dominant. Like, you know, they're not doing that. They're just writing this stuff, which is amazing. So, yeah. Again, two very different products where like one's a little bit more, you know, the traditional like snake charmer sound with the instrumentation, because it's supposed to be kind of like, you know, I don't know what culture, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I'm going to just pass on that. While the other one's a little bit more electronic, you know, very different sounding. Again, that's really cool. Same source material, but two like fairly different products. I don't think the contrast is as large as Studiopolis, but it's still pretty significant, you know, especially in comparison to what we just heard with Mario Tennis Aces, where they were like almost carbon copies. So now, I'm sorry we're done listening to music for now, but we're going to talk about all the mathematical statistics. No, we're just going to talk about the findings generally. So we found that generally there was good variety in modality. That's, again, the key and stuff. Meter, which is just like how they write it out in notation for how they group the notes together. Had moderate variety. Style was pretty high in everything, just because style is an easy thing to, you know, vary, as we heard with Super Mario Party, where, again, same source material, but they were able to create like 3 different sounding things in terms of instrumentation and style. This little graph that I have here is just kind of the breakdown of like, you know, major, so like how many songs were in major in the soundtrack, the percentage, versus minor, versus other modes. Other modes includes anything like whole tone, Dorian, like any of your modes, and anything that was completely percussive, because there were a few tracks in certain OSTs that were just all percussion, which is great. They need more of that. So generally, there was a good representation of the elements analyzed, and pretty much everything but dynamics. Dynamics, I know, are kind of a hard thing to convey, because we were looking for really vast dynamic contrast, not just like a little, okay, I think this is mezzo piano to mezzo forte, kind of like really soft to really loud, because that's what kids are going to notice. They're not going to sit there playing gaming like, ah, yes, mezzo piano to mezzo forte. I don't even do that, and I study music. I don't hear that stuff. So, you know, it offers music educators of any type, whether you teach in a school system privately or you just like talking to your friends about this, because you are a teacher if you teach your friend how to do something. I'm a firm believer of that. Just a more complete understanding of the music listening diet of young children. And it may lead to helping us create better informed curricular decisions, which is really more geared towards the people who are working in school systems. And more of the results, so I found for my own personal things, strong variety, the soundtracks were a breeze. Like, you know, I was having fun, I was typing the notes, didn't even realize that like an hour and a half had gone by, compared to the ones that didn't. I was sitting there 15 minutes and going, oh my God, when is this gonna end? So, you know, I found it very hard to get through because I listened to each soundtrack about 5 times, you know, one pass through, second pass through, after people gave me notes, and there were times where I missed things, so I had to just keep going back, which it's not a bad thing, good to be thorough, but when you don't really enjoy the music because it's just not varied enough, you like hit a wall. So I found that the Mario games, like, you know, they have set courses and levels, and some of you are like, what does that mean? So, you know, the Mario Party, you have set boards, and in Mario Tennis Aces, set stadiums that you, or courts that you can play on. I found that there tended to be a lot of recycled musical material, but you can see by this little GIF, I'm sorry that I can't like control it on command, how basically these 2 stadiums are almost identical. It's just that one is green and one is red. I don't know what they're called, I don't remember, like Marina Stadium and something else. But while titles with more variety had set stages, I know these 2 things kind of sound similar, but set stages meaning you have to kind of go in a certain order. So like Captain Toad, like, you know, I know that there are splits in, I believe, but it's pretty straight, like, you know, 1-1, 1-2, kind of like your traditional Super Mario World kind of things. And Katamari, you know, initially it's just like make a star 1, make a star 2, make a star 3, and then there are other little things that you could do, but it's kind of like a set path that you follow. They have more variety and there's just more exploration, even though it's kind of like you need to go in this order. And same with Detective Pikachu too, like you have to go in a certain order for the cases, but you can still explore a lot of the areas and hear the different music. And even though this wasn't a focus of our research, like it shows how context is very important to what influences soundtracks and what's being written, you know, given what they're trying to accomplish. So then, you know, more conclusions, more findings. The whole reason why I did this is because, you know, I love video game music. That's a huge understatement, but I really, really love it. And I'm a teacher, and, you know, a lot of my peers have been very dismissive of, like, you know, they're like, well, that's not music. I'm like, okay. So, you know, showing them what it has to offer, like, you know, it's similar to film music where, you know, we wouldn't necessarily feel the same emotions without the context of the music. So I think it's so important to be aware of how the music outside of what is specifically being written for children, like, you know, how it plays a role in their lives, because students maybe see their music teacher like 30 minutes a week. That's not a whole lot of time compared to think about how much time they could be spending playing video games and taking that music in. And children are sponges, let me tell you. I've taught kids, if you change something on them even a week later, they notice. It's kind of really cool where they'll do something different and they're talking to each other. They're like, that's different than last time. They hold on to it. They show everyone what they learned. I love it. That's how I am. I'm basically a big kid. So often the songs that are being written for children are in these brighter, happier modes, and using certain pitches because they feel that there are limitations for a young singer's voice, and some methodologies believe in, starting with only 2 pitches and then gradually adding in more just because of vocal tendencies of young children. So that's just an example of a song that we like did in one of my classes, the other day, it goes by so many titles. One of them was the Princess Pat in our class. So, it goes back to this accessibility for young children, They can get their hands on a video game, whether it be a console, a handheld, a mobile game. Like, it's very easy as we have technology becoming such a large part in our lives that they can start to access their own music and kind of inform their own, musical listening, which is so, so cool. Instead of, I grew up listening to mostly anything that my older siblings listened to, my parents listened to, as I'm sure some of you, you listen to what your family members listen to. And one methodology specifically talks about basically by age 9, like that's the formulation of your like musical environment. Not to say you can't add to it. I'm still, listening to new things. But, I see it with a lot of my peers, like where, they grew up listening to mostly classical music and they kind of don't want to listen to anything else. Like, if they heard something like this or like anything EDM, they're like, oh, what is that? And it's like, it's music and it's good. Compared to I listen to, like pop music from the 60s through the present day, European music, hip hop, R&B, rock, metal, punk. All my family members listen to vastly different things, so I like taking in anything. So like all these elements are found in video game musics and TV shows organically, and it's something I mentioned during Sonic Mania where, that's the huge difference with the video game music. They're not sitting there thinking, what do we need to do to have our children be well informed? They're not sitting at a table thinking about that. They're just writing what feels right and what they think is going to work and what they like, which I think is a huge difference compared to the teachers. Hey, if you're a teacher and you try to write a song in Phrygian and 9/8, more power to you. I've done it. It's great. But it's really cool when you can just find this material and something that they have access to and they can listen to it and just kind of absorb it. I think that's amazing. Because I had never heard of Phrygian dominant until I did this. Even I got to learn something new. Learning doesn't stop after you graduate or stop school, okay? Just saying. So now for future directions, we want to kind of apply a similar model to other mediums such as cartoons, specifically targeting Steven Universe. This research just got approved a few weeks ago, very excited, working with the same professor, and I will be interviewing actually one of the composers of the show because this will be a little bit more about how composer considerations for, the age group of working with these really young children. And, if they have anything to take into account, like, there's a lot of lyrical content in Steven Universe, like, how do they have to think about that? And then how does the music pair with it? What do they need to consider? Do they find that they have any limitations? These are the questions I want to know the answers to. So in Steven Universe, like, I really enjoy it. Like, to me, the music is so different than the stuff that I heard in cartoons growing up. So it'll be really fascinating to see, what went into, how, Rebecca, well, I'm not interviewing Rebecca Sugar, don't get your hopes up. But how these composers kind of, take it all in and think, okay, this is our age group. How do we do this? Or if there are anything that they have to consider in that regard. And little thing is just like my professor, her name's Dr. Danzero at BU, she's amazing. She does like all our early childhood stuff. I would not be, getting to do something like this without her because I'd have breakdowns and she was there for me to kind of like coach me through everything, making sure that I was organized because I had never done research in this kind of way before. So it was amazing. I got funded through my school. Like this was a paid research thing I did. There were like, through our arts initiative and through our undergraduate research opportunity program. It's been really cool to do all that. And thank you to Mages for letting me do this and to all of you for attending. Like I've never ran a panel by myself and this was so cool to have, a lot of people here. It's really cool to get to share this knowledge with all of you because you guys are all passionate about this too, video game music. So thank you. Those are my sources that you don't need to know about those. But just know that I owe a lot of thanks to people who did a lot of the heavy lifting for me in terms of the statistics so that I could have credibility. And, if you have any questions, you can just come talk to me. But thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.